the Syracuse Landmark Preservation Board meeting, September 21st, and it is called to order. Present at our meeting are, we'll start.
Mayor Hertzberg, Corporation Counsel's Office.
Ron Jones-Rouser.
Kyle Gregory.
Julia Marshall.
Jeff Romano.
Cynthia Carter.
Nicole Fragnito.
Auditor.
First order of business is to approve the minutes from August 31st meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I so move to accept the minutes as submitted.
Second.
Second.
Any modifications or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Board will now conduct the public hearing on today's agenda. First, the applicant or the applicant's representative will be invited to describe the proposed scope of work and to present any material or documentation regarding the proposal to the board. Next, persons wishing to speak in favor of the proposal will be given the opportunity to address the board. Then persons who wish to speak in opposition will be allowed to address the board. Finally, the applicant or representative will be given the opportunity to make closing comments to the board. Following each public hearing, the board may vote to approve with conditions, or deny the application just heard. The board may also decide to hold its decision until the next public meeting. If the hearing is closed, no additional information will be allowed into this record, except for information that the board may request. That information will be available for public review with board staff. Staff will now introduce the first application.
So first and only for this morning. This is a continuation of a public hearing from the August 10th meeting. At the board's request, the applicant has provided a window survey, which was in your packet, for the replacement of 9 second-story and attic-story windows. The house is in the Cedric Highland James Preservation District, and Chris Haynes is here today representing the applicant. I believe that's all I have. Yep.
Question,
Yep.
in meeting minutes, it said 5, so was the application revised?
The application was revised up because that was based on the board's request to include all of the windows that they're proposing to replace over time. Yeah.
That was based on phase of the job.
Phases of
Would
the
you
job.
like to come up? Do we
We're
have a
not
chair?
having the, okay.
Sorry?
No, I was asking, are we not having the?
Yeah, we
chair?
can. Let me.
So this is a continuation of the public meeting for a certificate of appropriateness for 305 Cedric Drive. Can you state your name?
Christopher C. Haynes. This is our survey. And have the window samples here, if we would like to take a look at them. The architectural features are all going to stay the same. Okay. Glass, wood interiors,
You're only replacing the sash, is that correct?
replacing
The frame as well?
the frame as well. Some of the frame is rotted, and we'll do that upon installation. Architectural features change inside and out. Okay, they can all be 6/1, and 6/1 is a standard window still built today. Okay, but fiberglass, vinyl, there's nothing unique about these windows other than they need to be replaced because they're past restoring. They're rotted. Got my rotted piece today. But this is where we're at. And I have some colored information information if anybody so chooses to take a look.
Yeah, that's in our package.
Yeah, I
It's in
guess
our
you guys
package,
can
yeah.
keep those two or whatever.
Thank you for that. So, last time, I thought we were talking about inserts and not full replacement. That has changed because of further
Yeah,
investigation?
no,
or
yeah,
can you-
yeah. We were always talking about full frame replacements. I was never talking about regular.
Talking about full exterior trim replacement, and I thought
Yes.
that was, you were
Yes.
going to be inserting sash back into the historic openings.
Where needed, yes. but-
Okay, where needed.
Where
So
needed, yes.
what is
We're
that?
We're past that.
What is that breakdown? Are they now all 9 of them going to be full replacement windows? And 0 insert? So these are brand-new windows being inserted in historic opening, and we're matching the exterior trim as per your detail.
Correct.
Okay. So this,
Is it a match in terms of the frame size and the sash size? I think that's where the questions are.
so if you have a historic 30, say it's a,
Yeah, you're gonna,
28
so
inch.
you're gonna lose a little glass. That's all you're gonna lose. You're still gonna get the same mutton features, the same style and rail features, the same interior trim features and exterior trim features. And so, that being said, you know, there's a lot of replacement windows in this house already. And so, we gotta kind of, you know, I'm trying to also not make it a patchwork house project, okay?
Sure.
And so, you know, it's only 9 windows that are left, you know what I mean?
9 windows remain. All the
Or
previous.
you probably have 11 or 12 that are original still. Some sashes have been replaced over the time. So we're not, these wood windows that we're looking at aren't all original. Okay, they're not all original to the
But
house.
the first floor are original windows.
No, not all. No, they're
You
not.
have that documented, and I didn't see that broken down in the report.
I shouldn't have to break down the whole first floor windows for you. I mean,
but
we
I-
can see it in the pictures, you know, and if you want to come to the property, some of these wood sashes have been replaced over time. And so,
I think that's why I thought it was the other property, because you could see that some of them were replaced already.
half of the front of the house is replaced and the other half is still original and not all original, okay? And so,
I guess let's focus on what you're asking for, to replace the 9 windows on the second floor. And I guess my question is, the frame size, the sash size, should be documented what the existing windows are in comparison to what the new windows are proposed. And how much of the glass area is being diminished? I mean, just a little bit is not technical for us. We need to know,
2 inches. 2 inches. All the way around or just across? All the way around. And so it's, you're losing,
2 inches all the way
you're
around.
losing 2 inches, and that's the same amount of glass you're losing with letting people put storms on these old windows. Okay? The minute you put storms on these old windows, and an old storm doesn't help the window at all.
But we're not
Secondly,
talking about the aluminum window. So you're taking off the aluminum
we're
window.
talking about the whole window, yes. We're talking about the whole package of
no.
windows.
I understand that. So you're proposing to take off their existing storms and their existing windows and
Correct.
replace with this window. So what I think the board would like to understand is the existing window frame and existing window sash sizes in comparison to what you're replacing.
2 inches. 2 inches. Doesn't change.
Existing one is 2 inches as well? The ones that are original?
No, I don't think, well, that's
This
the
is 2
explanation.
inches
No, that's what I
smaller
mean.
than the original.
Pardon?
This is 2 inches smaller than the original glass. Already have half of that on the front of the house.
To the replacement windows.
My quandary is, if this is a whole jam replacement, sash and jamb, how can we match the historic opening with that new jamb as well? Is that
They're
possible?
made to fit, yeah.
So then how are we losing 2 inches of glazing space?
You're not losing space, you're losing 2 inches on the total frame, right? And so the frame gets smaller. Your insert gets smaller by 2 inches. So whether I put a storm on the original that has a 2-inch flange on the outside of the whole window.
I understand. Well, my question is, if you're pulling out the wooden unit,
Right.
the historic unit, and you're installing or inserting a new unit, how are we getting narrower with the glazing when it's fitting the historic opening? What's changed?
2 inches. Okay, so
2
2 inches.
2 inches of what material?
2 inches of what?
2 inches of what?
So
What's
2 inches of the whole window. If I shrink this thing by 2 inches, of course you're gonna have a little bit less glass. That's obvious, right? I'm not gonna be able to fit these sashes to the original opening. I'm putting a full replacement window in. That's how that works, right?
replacement? If we have a historic opening that's, we'll just say it's 30 inches, you're removing that entire window plus the jamb. So then you're adding 2 or 3 inches to that opening because you're physically removing that structure. The new window would go back into that,
The window's just gonna fit at the jamb, just like that.
into the existing
into
jamb.
the
So these are
existing jamb.
replacement windows, not new windows
Right.
put into into a new opening. Okay, so the existing jambs remain.
The existing jambs remain.
Okay, that's
So I
very,
said-
that's,
that's what I said at the beginning.
you said these are new windows
These-
going in.
New sashes, these are sashes.
I just want to make sure we're
Okay?
clear.
Everyone, this is a sash.
Correct,
Right.
right. And then you need your liner that comes with the replacement sash.
This is the liner.
Right, and the fitting into the historic opening. So the,
In the new
Okay,
frame
okay.
in, you're losing 2 inches all the way
yeah,
around.
okay.
And it's no different than the storms that are on there already. If you put a new aluminum storm on those old windows, the flange is about 2 inches, inch and 7/8 about. And so you're losing that much glass by trying to save old windows with a product that's not even installed right.
Just for clarification, these are the historic window opening jamb is remaining, and these are replacement windows being inserted into historic openings. And that's why we're
Right,
losing the
because
glazing area.
at first, okay,
Right.
the discussion of the last time we were here, the understanding was just the sash and that the jambs were remaining.
Oh, I never said just the sash. No, I said whole replacements. Whole replacements.
Okay, we'll just,
We can go, you know, and so here we are. Flip that around. A little different. Everything stays the same.
yeah, the 6/1
You putting
pattern.
aluminum storms on windows that are historic, you're gonna keep ruining them. And we can't then replace them or restore them because then they just get further destroyed.
Kate, do you have information on the mutton bars in terms of the size?
I think what we have is the word of the
Yeah,
applicant,
it's-
that they
it's
are the,
So Marvin Windows, it's in here. And Ryan
What is-
Windows are gonna be
Okay,
supplying the windows. And so all of these mutton bars are gonna be the same as the original. It's a standard.
same profile,
It's a
same
standard mutton
size.
bar that's in
okay.
non-historic
Well, generally
houses.
speaking, historic windows, the mutton bar is smaller, so that's why the question is being asked, that the mutton bar match what's there in terms of size. In profile as well as size.
But there's many different profiles we can go with, you know, so that's.
I
a
know
little bit
Marvin
more.
does make profiles that would
Right,
fit
they
the
have standard profiles.
Yeah.
We stay away from the strap.
Yeah, and I understand that, you know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
I'm just showing you
Yeah.
that there is different
What you're
feature
right.
profiles.
What you're showing is more
available.
historically
Yeah,
appropriate.
right.
I'm sorry, did you say
Can I-
there were two window companies? Did you say Marvin and
So,
another
like,
one?
Marvin Windows is the maker, and Ryan Windows is the supplier.
Oh,
Right here in Syracuse.
So I did have a conversation with colleagues at the State Historic Preservation Office about the route that they take with window replacements with residential properties. And generally, their guidance is, or their standard practice, again, this is with residential, non-commercial properties, is that they, unless the windows are really quite unique, leaded glass, diamond shape, that, you know, those sorts of things, that they are really looking toward, they're looking less towards the homeowner providing, you know, significant documentation about the condition of the windows, and more towards making sure that the replacement is a good replacement, a quality replacement, and that the average viewer on the street would not be able to tell the difference. But then that, you know, comes down to, again, making sure that the mutton bars are not the straps, not the in-between the glass, they're exterior applied. They generally do, or they really do not allow vinyl, which I know this is not a situation here. Yeah, that really the idea is that from the street that they will look as close as possible to the original, and that's where they're headed at this point in terms of their reviews, window reviews.
That's why I make the point that, especially for losing 2 inches around, the original ones were quite thin. So in this sample, that is a much larger sample of,
It's just, this is the same size that is in the windows right now.
what I'm looking at here appears to be smaller, and I'm not going to argue because we're not measuring it, but that's my point, is that you need to get the smallest mutton bar that's
That we can
available
pop- yeah. Yep.
to match
To
this.
match that. Yeah, we can do that.
Other aspects to discuss?
I have a question, and it may not be in our jurisdiction at all, but do we have any concerns as far as the lead, if any of the painting is lead, and if it's properly being remediated?
That would be with the contractor, the responsibility of the contractor, yeah.
Yeah, I think,
We're removing all the wood off the premises, so you don't have to worry about lead paint, all this.
I would expect that's addressed at the building permit stage.
Right, that it be disposed of properly per requirements. Next, I just have some questions. You want to bring it up?
Yes, the flashing detail.
Sure.
Put the window down if you'd like, yeah.
Sorry.
Keep balancing that.
Yep.
We're just looking at the flashing detail here. It's brown, matches the existing trim.
Correct.
But we're always trying to maintain sight lines and historic sight lines. And my question comes to your drip edge underneath and the apron. Is that larger or smaller than existing, or is it the same size?
That's just the profile, so what it does is, let me show you. This, I couldn't draw that great, so it's actually out a little bit. So this drip edge here is actually acting as a hook strip, right, for the counter flashing here. This is actually out a little bit, so the cove molding profile goes back inside, and it just matches up with that like it originally was.
Okay,
It
so
just,
you-
it just acts as a metal shroud now, because what they had was it's just a bent over piece of metal, and it was face nailed on the face and then face nailed from the top. So water in,
Probably an
rot
afterthought.
out, right? Water in,
Yeah.
rot out.
And we're just matching the historic line of it, right?
Correct.
So it matches all the way
It
around the
matches,
houses.
it's gonna match all the way around, and, you know, we decided to go with the drip edge to give everything that little bit more rain shed, right? And so it needed that, you know?
And,
The
well,
next question is, in the drawing here, you're putting new timber on top of old timber?
No, this is,
You are
this
removing-
was, yes, this was, the original plan was to do an overlay,
Mm-hmm.
and as we discovered more, it was too rotted, and so we extracted and installed it.
Section. That was
So
my
it's in the
concern as
same
well,
plane?
It's in the same plane.
That we were
Okay.
building
Back the same,
outward
it
and,
was
yeah.
the same, yep.
Because then this drawing would be incorrect in terms of
Okay.
what they're coming back with, because then I was going to ask for, this should be updated,
Yeah, I'll update it.
because otherwise it would sit proud of the face of the wall, and you'd want flashing on the top, because otherwise water would just. So you're putting it in the
So
face
like,
of the same
yeah, so
plane?
like, you're misinterpreting this drawing a little bit. Everything is in the same plane, whether it's an overlay or an underlay.
That's why this should
okay?
be-
And so,
This is not what they're coming back with.
Okay.
if you're removing the trim as
yeah,
is.
no, I
and then
think I
you're
had that in
replacing
my
back, so-
application, whether it was gonna be an extraction or an overlay.
Well, it's just a little confusing there because we don't want water to sit there and just rot out all the new wood.
Oh, yeah, so.
Because it
so
shows
typ-
no flashing or anything, it
Alright,
just
so-
says sealed.
So here, let me show you, so you understand. You're looking at a wall detail, right? And you know there's a roof above the wall? Sure. Right? And so, because I only have so many drawing skills, this roof line actually sits in plane. Okay, there's actually a trim board in plane with this. Okay, that would be on the same plane, right? And so none of this would actually be flashing other than tape flashing, right? So none of this would actually get metal roofing flashing, because this is a gable end, right? This is a gable end like this.
Yeah.
So we're draining that way, not this way, right?
I'm misunderstanding, because I thought this was talking about the timbering.
Oh, it is, it is.
Timbering
It's
on
just
the
on the
face.
gable end of the house, not, so, I'll just redraw it for you, it's fine, I'll just redraw it.
So,
Yeah.
so you're saying that it is all in the same plane and
It
that
is.
there's no
It is.
opportunity for
Yes, I'm
water to
looking
sit?
at this.
then?
If you're replacing this half timbering, is it in the same plane as the stucco?
Stucco.
Absolutely.
Okay, well,
Whether
that's
it's,
not.
whether it's an overlay or on a full extraction, okay?
It will be in the same
It would
plane
be in the
as,
same
as
plane
the
as stucco,
stucco?
correct.
Okay,
Yep.
because
Okay.
that's not what's showing there. Okay.
It's just drawn, it's just
I-
drawn.
Yeah, I know, but
mean,
we
it's a-
have to react to what
Yeah,
we're
okay.
given in
Right, sure,
terms of
and that's part of the
information.
official record, so
Okay.
we just want to make
Okay.
sure we're all talking about
I'll
apples and
redraw it, no
apples.
problem.
Any more discussion? Do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Any discussion?
Oh, any discussion?
As submitted, no changes.
All in favor? Any opposition?
For the blessing, Al. Appreciate it. I'll redraw that, resubmit it, and then you guys will have all your information, and then, I'll do your packet too, right?
Oh, no, just, I would just need the new drawing, that's all. Yep, that's all. Yep.
Thank you.
And we have no old business.
Across the board. I'm Chris Wiles, I'm the owner of 3057. It's been quite a journey for us to get to this point. My question is, and the most important thing to me is the historic tax credit that I get from the state on my state income taxes. And that's a driver. I don't think a lot of people understand that. it's very expensive to keep these houses up in this preservation district. And that historic tax credit coming back to us means a great deal in the whole project. One thing that drives this is that tax credit, which we would like to get done before the end of the year, and the cost as time goes on of Mr. Haynes and other intervening weather conditions. So we are always cognizant of the time that's passing. I'm going to say this. Mr. Haynes knows what he's doing. He's the first one that I've found that understands. I mean, we talk with a number of contractors, some very reputable, and some of the costs and ideas that they come up with doesn't make any sense to us. We've lived in this house over 20 years, so we know the houses on the block, and we know the houses in the preservation district. The biggest problem we had with this board, which I don't think many of you were on the board at that time, was doing our front porch, which was too narrow, too enclosed, didn't have enough light, those practical considerations, and we finally got over that hump. But my wife, from her experience before the board, says, I will never go there again. And Mr. Haynes very graciously said, I will do it for you. I will do it for you. I just want the board to be aware of all these factors. I'm not into his, this means this and this means that, and we're going to do 2 inches, 4 inches, or whatever. I'm fully aware of what he's doing on the house because I live there. And it's an excellent job, and it takes time, a lot of time, and a lot of very particular work. Let me say, I'm not sure if we have the approval. We're now doing the north end of the house, and we want to do the south end. Did we get the approval for that? Or do we have to come back? Okay. Eventually, I assume we will get to the front. The front is going to be a bigger problem because it faces the street. I've talked numerous times with State Preservation in Albany. In fact, yesterday was our last conversation, and she said, just tell us what the windows look like. If they're on the side of the house, we're not as much concerned. I sent her the application or the page from the application of what the windows looked like. She said, if you can't find it, if you can't get it to me, I'll give you a conditional approval, subject to whatever the city says. I was told the city was looking for the state to go first. The state looks for the city to go first. 20 years ago, we didn't have to deal with this. Today we do. And I think that's important. What the state does is you send them pictures of what it looked like before the work began, and they approve it. Then when the work is done, you send them pictures again, and they approve the tax credit. So they know exactly what it looks like before and what it looks like after. And I think that's very important. I just wanted to say that there's so much more to this project than meets the eye or is in the pamphlets. Thank you.
So yeah, okay, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. It is a public hearing. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, please. Go ahead. Yeah.
Jennifer Schultz, 710 Rugby Road. I've lived in Sedgwick Farm for 16 years now. I just want to point out a few things. Number one, I want to speak in favor of the application. You've already approved it, so thank you for doing that. I agree that windows are under the purview of the Landmark Preservation Board. However, interior is not. Is that correct? I know there's no back and forth. Yep. Never mind, I can't ask questions. And I remember from the August 31st meeting that you actually asked for interior photos, and that
Yeah.
It was for the window. It was to see the.
Condition of the window.
Right, but it's interior, and interior is off limits for preservation governance.
The window is a unit.
Right. So it's to
Exterior.
substantiate the condition of
It's
the
the
window
same,
that they're.
it's the same
yeah.
structural piece of the component of the window, whether you're looking at it from the outside or from the inside. The sash and the frame are a unit. You can't distinguish between one saying you're just looking at the outside versus the inside.
But as Kate pointed out, when you spoke to, was it the state that you said, and the way they judge it based on the view from the street?
Right,
That
and
reinforces
so
that?
I think that the reason why the board asked for interior photographs is because if the applicant is stating that it is because of extensive deterioration, the interior also is very telling of that state of deterioration and can sometimes help seal the deal, as it were, that because you can see up close the broken panes of glass, you can see rotted sills or sash or whatever, which is very difficult to see from just from taking from the outside. So it is the only feature that the board requests interior photographs of ever.
I still would like to see more detail on that. Maybe Corporation Counsel at some point can clarify that, because again, interior is interior is interior. And I understand it's to determine the state of the window, but again, if historic preservation only has governance over exterior, somebody walking down the street, that's, in my opinion, how it should be, or my understanding, not my opinion. The other thing I want to point out too is I remember at the August meeting, you talked about the stucco repair. And while that is exterior, if they're repairing that like kind, I thought that with this new rezone and with your processes over the last few years, that would have been more of an administrative approval that would not have even been part of this, other than to say, check.
The stucco and the windows were grouped in one application, so that's how it came
But it's
before.
like kind repair?
And it is in kind, and so the questions that came up today were just in regard to the window-related, and then the detail, making sure that the detail of the stucco was,
Of the half timbering.
of the half
Yeah,
timbering
the
was
timbering is not the
correct.
stucco.
Okay, I heard it more at the last meeting. I didn't hear you discuss that in detail at this
Yeah, we-
meeting, so that's good. And the last thing I'll point out is what Mr. Wiles did just say about the historic tax rebate credit, which I cannot sing that song enough. I'm almost like a attack dog when I'm in the neighborhood and I see the roof go up and I go to the neighbor and say, did you apply? Oh, that's too much work. I said, it's not. I'm going to print the application. I'm going to come over. I'm going to show you how it goes, and it's super easy. So I couldn't, applaud that more, that we get that out there, because this stuff is really expensive. But to that point, if you've ever applied to that tax rebate credit, you don't need your approval. I mean, no offense. I want folks to come to you because we are in a preservation district and it is your area to govern. But you can go to the state, and there's two boxes. One has this received local designation approval, and if not, then you have to submit all these other proof to get the credit. So I just want to point out that people could usurp this board, which I don't want them to do, and then the tax rebate credit can determine whether or not they'll get it based on whether or not it's a historic repair.
Whether or not the state approves the tax credit, they would still need a certificate of appropriateness through the Landmark Preservation Board.
It does,
So
the state does their own vetting, so.
they do, but if the state could approve something that the board with its local jurisdiction could deny, it would most likely would not happen. But because we are using the same criteria, but and we do want to work in concert, obviously, with the State Preservation Office, so, yeah.
The State Preservation Office isn't, they rely on the local jurisdictions to do all the footwork for preservation in local jurisdictions. So I think it's a bit of a fallacy to say somebody could apply to the state for something and usurp this board. There's different purposes for what the state's looking at and for our regulation, which is a different process. And just as to the windows, I think, I'm sure you understand this, but a window, as with many items in a house, it's an assembly. So when you look at a window from the inside, the jamb goes from the interior to the exterior, and it's one piece of wood. And the window assembly, which is a whole bunch of pieces of something, just like a lock is an assembly, a hinge is an assembly, a conglomeration of pieces. So a window assembly sits, you put them in from the inside sometimes, but windows, looking at the interior of a window is not inappropriate for the board.
So would this board have not approved it if the windows were not in disrepair?
I can't tell you what this board would do.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to understand why you need that interior view. Jeff had said that, you need to see the broken panes and the other deterioration in order to make the decision. I think that's what was said.
He was saying it, but yeah, interior deterioration, if you have penetration, water penetration that is unseen on the outside.
But that unseen,
Let me-
you need that proof?
Let me just say
It
that.
helps build the case.
Exactly.
It's a case-by-case basis,
It supports
so.
actually the person who's coming before the board if they can show that the windows are not just rotting from the inside or rotting from the outside. It's part of the support for the action that they are
So if the window
requesting.
wasn't rotting, they couldn't do this project? If they just wanted to
I
change them
can't
out
say what
because
the
they're...
board would say one way or another. What was presented to us is what we review.
aren't-
And I think that, that I haven't been here long, but I've been here long enough that I haven't seen any projects that come before us, especially with windows, that have not gone through. But primarily, as far as the interior, I believe that, as you know, because you do live in a historic district, that the main goal for this board is to ensure that many of those historic features remain.
Of course.
So if there's things that can be salvaged, I think that that is the intention of the board, and that is for us to relate to contractors who may just want to go in and rip things out. I think is to give them the full understanding that these things are historic to the property and can remain if it's salvageable. So I think that's the important part of seeing
Very
that as
important, and
well.
obviously the whole reason for this board and for these laws. But on that note, being a property owner of a home that's 110 years old, that's old, and it's cool, and it's great, and it should be preserved if you can, but you also want to enjoy your house, and you want to have a little more thermal protection. And if there's a window out there that meets your standard, we, as a property owner, should have a right to buy those windows and replace the old 120, 110-year-old window.
Absolutely. I
So-
don't think it has.
And that's why
I
I'm
don't
looking
think-
for the criteria or the standard or the guideline that says, if you want to replace window, it must be in this condition, or here's the detail. Right, exactly. So now we're here and we're uncovering
The case
all
by
these
ca-
other details.
It's a
And
case by
lead was
case
brought up,
basis.
and-
It's case by case. I mean, we can't just give a blanket statement.
But you can give more criteria, like we need to see the interior of the home, and the reason for that is we need to see the decay, and there needs to be a certain percentage of decay in order for us to approve you replacing the window.
This debate right now.
Okay.
Okay, well, we can bring this up another time, but thank you for approving this application.
The law is what the law is right now, and I don't think you need
It's
to
very foggy.
debate the content of the law in this meeting.
Left up for a lot of interpretation. Thanks.
The other item I would stress is notice to new homeowners coming in. There's a way to do that, and I was just difficult, but I think new homeowners should know, and you've run into this. Districts out in the county, and it was always a question. Notify homeowners that are coming in, they're not even owners yet, buyers that are coming in, that they are in historic Texas. I don't think then they can come in and say, well, we didn't.
That's not within the board's purview, but thank you for that.
But we have,
I
yeah.
think we need to close the public meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you.
And,
Okay,
I have a couple questions.
discussion.
this.
515 West Onondaga Street, Gillette House, emergency selective demolition and update.
Yeah, so I went and did a very quick review. So the Gillette House is 550. Does everyone know where the Gillette House is? Yeah. It's National Register listed it as not a local protected site.
Excuse
And
me.
Matt.
The meeting's not over. Oh, okay.
So the Gillette House is listed on the National Register. It is not a local protected site. The property owners, they own the former church next door as well, and they are recipients of a fair amount of state funding. The first plan was to turn the church into a brewery, I believe, and I believe that is still the plan. However, their initial partners, they parted ways, so the project is still out there. And then for the Gillette House specifically, my understanding is that they received some DRI funding, which is Downtown Revitalization Initiative funding, to rehab the house and turn it into office space. That, in the meantime, actually, a number of us went over to the Gillette House more than a year ago because the rear of the property is open and collapsing, in a state of collapse, and that has not changed. I went there again this week, or last week, late last week, and it's worse. Obviously, it's worse because nothing has taken place. So I went and spoke to Jake DeShaw, who is the head of codes, and Brian Eisenberg, who helps with the vacant property registry, as well as runs the cities when there's demolitions. He's the demolition person. And they are, because of the condition of the property, and the concern is the further it deteriorates, not only are people getting in there, obviously, and that is a danger, but if it is not the rear portion is not selectively removed, and then the remaining is stabilized, it could compromise the entire building if that hasn't happened already because of lack of action. So I believe that, the letters informing the property owner about the emergency declaration went out this week. And my understanding is the property owners have the option to find their own contractor to do the work. But if the city to do the selective demolition, right? And that was something that was being pulled out, that this is not a complete demolition, but a selective one, and/or the city will has contractors who will bid on the project. So there should be more news soon on that, but it is time to take action on that property, because if the city doesn't take some action, the property owners don't, then I think the whole building may come down. So, yeah.
Has there been any?
Yeah, and
Any
since
updates?
then,
we did a tour of the former church, and we talked about.
right, and
Gillette House.
since then, they received the DRI funding specific to the Gillette House, and the idea was to move.
To Gillette House. Okay, so
Yep.
it's not the property, but specifically.
It's-
not the whole complex, but
Not the whole
specific to
complex,
Gillette
but it
House.
was, actually, I can't say that for sure, but I know that the Gillette House was front and center in that DRI, and the idea was to preserve that, preserve the main block of the house and put offices in there, so.
So the selective demo, is that the rear of the building?
The rear, yep, yep. And again, I'm
It's pretty much falling down on its own, so.
yeah, but we don't want it to bring the house down, and that's the concern. Yeah,
And supported.
and
The pictures were pretty damning from it.
Yeah.
A couple
when the bids come in for the contractors that the city has sent the proposal out to, the RFP out to, when they come in, I think that they'll be detailing what it is that they would be doing in terms of stabilizing. And that, I mean, that is the important component right there, is how they button up the rest of the house. And I just wanted to bring it to your attention. Jake DeShaw also mentioned the possibility of having the owners come and talk to the board about the condition of the property and what the plan is.
And an update of the whole project.
The whole project, yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Before we adjourn, I just have one thing. I was remiss.
Councilor Schultz.
Yeah, we'll get the process worked out in terms of we're a
I
little bit, we're stuck in the way that we're used to run our meetings, so we'll get the public hearing process.
Yeah, I think you
Changed.
voted before you asked whether there was any
Okay.
project, so you would have asked that and then taken the vote. Had discussion.
So we would have had discussion from Mr. Haynes as well as from Counselor Schultz prior
As
to
part
the
of the
vote.
public hearing, then you would have closed the public
Public hearing,
comment,
okay.
and then the board would deliberate
Okay.
and vote. But no harm done, that's why I didn't tell them they couldn't talk, because we were a little out of order with that, but it's fine.
But it
We
was fine because
changed
the
our-
decision anyway was to approve, so I don't think
This is a little
anyone.
bit different from what we've been doing for years.
Very different.
So, okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Okay, thank you.